Here it is, the engine of my BMW before the repair, which I will do myself in my home garage, all to bring it back to its old glory and make it feel 10 years younger. I will show you step by step, in a simple way, how to clean the throttle body, because right now, the engine idle is not stable, which means it's not working properly. I will also show you how to clean the EGR valve, because at the moment, it's full of carbon buildup. Next, I will take care of the whole air intake system and its gaskets, because in a 20-year-old car, it is definitely time to do it. Another important step will be changing the glow plugs, because the old ones are very worn and already causing problems. We will also replace the vacuum line from the vacuum pump, which is damaged. On top of that, I will replace the air filter, because the old one is in terrible condition, and I don't know how long it has been there. One of the key jobs will be the valve cover gasket, which is leaking and causing oil to come out on the side of the engine. And finally, the exhaust manifold, which, as you will see later, is cracked. That's why there is a smell of exhaust fumes under the hood. Along the way, I will also clean the injectors, because it can be done while working on the car, and I'll show you many other important things that, as a BMW owner or fan, you should not miss. And the whole process will be shown in 4K resolution so you can easily repeat it yourself. It takes just about $200 to bring this amazing machine back to full glory. It's time to get to work, open the hood and let's go. Okay, let's start right from the beginning. I'll show you which tools to use and the part numbers for the components I'll be replacing. I'm starting with removing the plastic covers for the cabin filters. First, unclip the metal latch located right here and then turn the single screw that I've just highlighted on the screen. For this, you'll need a size 13 socket. The bolts are quite delicate, so you have to be careful not to break them. Remove the cover on the other side in exactly the same way. Then take off the seal that protects the interior from water. It's not screwed in, you just need to slide it off. Next, unscrew the bolts holding the lower cabin filter housing located right here. For this, you'll need a standard Phillips bit, a PZ2. Next, disconnect the plastic piece that connects both sides. You need to pull it toward yourself while standing on the right side of the car. Right after that, remove the plastic drain channels that seal the edges on both sides. This will give you space to take out the lower part of the cabin filter covers, which I'm removing on the screen now after unscrewing 2 additional plastic bolts with a 13mm socket, just like in the earlier step. Finally, remove the last 2 plastic covers on the right and left sides. After that, you can take off the engine support bar, which is held by 4 Torx T30 bolts. All of them are easy to reach and they come out very smoothly. Now I remove the 7 screws of the acoustic cover. All of them are located in the marked spots, and to get them out, you'll need a size 5 Allen bit. On some engine versions, these screws may be Torx 25 or 30 depending on the model. Once all the screws are out, I unscrew the oil filler cap and take off the cover. After putting all the parts aside in a safe place, I screw the oil filler cap back on and move on to the side air filter panel, wondering what kind of surprise I'll find inside. I remove the 3 screws marked on the screen, using the same Torx or Allen bit I used just a moment ago. Now comes an interesting moment, because based on this, you can see if someone really took care of the car. In this case, it's clear that maintenance was not a priority. The filter looks absolutely terrible. You can even see leaves from last autumn. A real mess. It's definitely time for a replacement, so I go ahead and remove the next part of the air intake to give myself a bit more space to work. This element is held by a single screw, located right here. Once again, depending on the car version, you'll need either an Allen bit or a Torx, just like before. After removing it, the whole piece comes out without any trouble. Next, we'll take out the remaining part of the air filter housing so that we can remove the filter itself and get access underneath it to the exhaust manifold. For this, you'll need to remove 5 screws around the housing. For the ones at the back, you may need a slim bit extension because the space is quite tight. Once all the screws are out, I take the part off, exposing the air filter in full view. This is what it looks like. Now just imagine how much of an impact this has on the engine's performance. I quickly pull out the old filter. The new one is already waiting in its box. We'll install it a bit later. In the meantime, I take the chance to vacuum the entire housing because this way, no leftover dirt will fall deeper into the engine. Keeping everything clean is a very important step. Now we'll unscrew the duct on the side of the mass airflow sensor, which connects to the cold side of the turbocharger. It's held by 2 screws, the same type as before. One of them, the one further in the back, can be a bit tricky to reach. Honestly, I had some trouble getting to it myself. The bottom part isn't screwed in, so you can take the whole piece out just like this. Next, I unscrew the single bolt holding the clamp on the aluminum turbocharger duct. Why? Because moving it aside will give us much more space to reach the exhaust manifold, which I need to replace. Once the bolt is out, all you need to do is rotate the clamp about 180 degrees. The latch pops out and the duct becomes completely loose. I slide it to the side and cover the turbo inlet to protect it from anything accidentally falling inside, because that's the last thing we want. In the next step, we focus on these 3 caps. From the top, you need to remove 3 individual rubber plugs. I carefully pry them out with a soft plastic trim tool to avoid any damage. Once they're out, I move to the bottom and take off the triangular metal panel, which is held in place by a snap clip. On the left side, we already have all the parts removed, so now I move to the right side of the car, to the throttle body and the EGR valve. I pull out the clip from the air intake pipe and slide the pipe out of the collar, leaving it loose. This whole setup is quite tight, so the easiest way is to remove the front reinforcement and simply make more working space. The whole assembly, in every engine version, is held in place with 10 Torx 30 screws, located in these spots. It's quite a bit of unscrewing, but trust me, this is still a much better solution than trying to remove the intake without enough room to get your hand in. You can definitely use power tools to loosen the screws, but never tighten them this way. That's very important, and I'll explain why in the later stages. I lift the whole panel and move it a bit to the side. I don't take it off completely, because from the bottom, it's still held by the cable and the hood latch. There's no point in removing all of that, since this space is already enough. Now I unscrew the 3 bolts holding the throttle body. 2 of them are located underneath, and you might have a bit of trouble reaching them, especially if the system is leaking and covered with carbon buildup like in my case. The bolts are Torx 25. In the meantime, disconnect the electronic plug by pressing the 2 clips on the sides of the housing. Once you take out the throttle body, check its condition. In my case, it's not too bad, but either way I will give it a proper cleaning later on and replace the gaskets, so that I won't have to deal with it again for the rest of the car's life. Things look a bit different with the EGR valve. Inside, there's a lot of buildup that restricts airflow and affects the mixture that burns in the engine's combustion chamber. As a result, the engine gets less air than it should, and to maintain the same power, it has to consume more fuel. But don't worry, we'll take care of it, and everything will get back to normal. Next, I unscrew the worm clamp that holds the hose from the EGR cooler. For this, you only need a flat screwdriver or a size 7 socket. After loosening it, I leave the hose hanging loose and move on to the 4 bolts that connect my EGR valve to the intake cover. Here, you'll most likely face a little challenge, because the bottom bolt sits quite deep and can be tricky to reach. The key is having the right length of extension for your bits. Too short or too long will make it much harder. You'll need a size 5 hex bit, but on some engine versions, it will be a Torx 30. Once you manage to get them all out, you can remove the entire EGR valve. To remove the entire element, we still need to disconnect the vacuum hose, which is located right here. The whole thing doesn't look too good. You can clearly see that no one has checked this area for a long time. Later on, I'll show you how to save money and restore it to proper working condition without the need to buy a brand new part. I will also show you how to test the diaphragm for leaks, so we can be sure everything works as it should. That will come a bit later. If you find this material useful and helpful, please don't forget to leave a like and a comment under the video. This way, I'll know it's worth creating more guides like this one. I'm starting to unscrew the bolts from the intake cover. There are as many as 19 of them in total. Along the line of the channels, you'll need a size 10 socket, and deeper inside the manifold, you'll need size 11. Here's a quick tip. It's worth getting long sockets, like the ones shown in the picture, because you'll also need them in later stages and there's really no good substitute for them. After removing all the bolts, there's still one more on the side that holds the oil dipstick, and that one also needs to be taken out using a size 10 socket. At this point, I also disconnect two electrical plugs. The first one here, secured at the top with a latch that's very easy to release, and the second one located just below it, also with a locking tab that needs to be opened before sliding it out. Here, you need to be careful not to break it. Behind the cover, you'll also see a rubber vacuum hose, which can simply be pulled out of its sleeve. It isn't fastened in any way. Once the intake cover is freed, we can finally remove it. Don't worry about the bolts here. None of them should fall out. If they're not damaged, they'll all stay in the housing and come out together with it. At this stage, we're about halfway through the disassembly. Now I remove all the injector plugs along the entire rail. There are 6 of them in total, each with its own latch that's easy to access. In addition, the plastic panel is secured with 3 bolts, which you can undo using a size 5 socket. Make sure you remember the exact order of the plugs, because the sequence is very important and must not be mixed up. Once the bolts are removed and set aside safely, the entire panel can be shifted to the side so it doesn't get in the way. At this point, I'm loosening the first 3 fuel lines marked on the screen using an open-end wrench size 13. Once they're removed, set them aside carefully and keep them in the exact same order they were installed. This is the best approach for reassembly since these lines don't use any additional seals and are already perfectly matched to the spots where they were originally mounted. Swapping them around is a bad idea and could lead to fuel leaks, and that's something we definitely want to avoid. We're going to work on the injectors now, so I vacuumed the whole area to remove all the debris that has built up here over the years. This way, nothing falls into the engine because that could damage the valves, and we don't want that. After vacuuming the top side, I loosen the injector nuts, 12 in total. This is where the long sockets I mentioned earlier really help. They're simply more comfortable. Here we need 8 or 10 mm, depending on the car version. Many people are afraid of this stage, but it's not hard. I'll tell you step by step what to do and what not to do, so listen closely and everything will be fine. Now I insert a flathead screwdriver between the injector and the housing and gently pry it to check how tightly the injector is seated. In this case, they don't move at all. I don't know when they were last removed. That's why I use an old reliable trick, WD-40. I spray a little on each injector and wait a short moment to let it work. I don't touch the fuel lines that connect all of them together because I don't want to let too much air into the system. We already removed one fuel line in the earlier step, so here we can avoid disconnecting another one. The second thing is that if you disconnect the injectors and reinstall them in a different order than before, you'll need to reprogram them. And that's exactly what I want to avoid. They work fine, so there's no need for that. All I'll do is clean them and everything will be great. I make a second check with the screwdriver to assess how difficult the task will be, and I can already tell it won't be too bad. I grab the injector connector with my fingers and move it slightly left and right to loosen it up. At some point, they start to rotate in the slot and become free. Do not try to force this with tools. It's very easy to damage something. New original BMW injectors cost around $400 each, so it's easier to spend 20 extra minutes on this task instead of paying that much money. Once they're loose, I take them out and place them on a clean cloth or a piece of cardboard I prepared earlier. This way, we've prepared the space for replacing the valve cover gasket. Well done, really great job. The last plastic piece we'll remove is the cover itself. I'm now loosening the 18 bolts securing it to the engine. I misplaced the photo from when it was still in place, so I'll show you the bolt locations on the removed part. You'll need a size 10 socket. From underneath, the bolts are held by rubber grommets. You don't need to pull them out forcefully. In addition, you'll also need to remove the 12 injector studs using a size 4 socket. There's quite a bit of unbolting here, but that's because everything needs to stay perfectly sealed, and it's one of the reasons these engines can last so long. On the side, there's one more bolt securing the wiring to the housing. It's a bit tricky to reach, so take your time. Don't break the plastic. It's important because it prevents the element from touching the hot exhaust manifold. To remove it, use a size 5 socket. After this step, you can lift off the entire valve cover, revealing the beautiful inside of the engine. Looks great, doesn't it? If you've made it this far, you're already close. Soon, we'll start putting everything back together. For now, please leave a like and let's keep going. I'm loosening the bolts located here on the manifold using a deep socket size 10. I also see in the catalogue that on some versions of this engine you may come across size 11 or even 12. Next, at the connection between the manifold and the EGR cooler channel, I'm using size 13, though in some versions it will be size 12. Finally, at the connection with the turbocharger, you'll need a deep socket size 12. In some cases, it may be size 13. Access here is especially tight, so having the right socket is key, since there's absolutely no way to reach it from the other side. After removing all the fasteners, the long-awaited moment has come. I can finally take out the entire exhaust manifold and check if my suspicion was correct, that it's actually damaged. I'm inspecting it carefully and I can clearly see a large crack right here. This was exactly the source of the exhaust leak that was causing the smell under the hood. You can see in the photo how significant this damage is. Perfect. Time to replace it with a brand new one. I ordered a replacement part with quality comparable to the original one. The OEM version costs nearly $850, while this aftermarket part, which has excellent reviews from other users, cost me only $65, including the complete set of bolts and new gaskets that I'll show you in a moment. Below this video, you'll find a full list of all the part numbers I'm using, just in case you need something. But keep in mind that in the case of the exhaust manifold, I didn't order all the parts separately. I went for one complete kit. Before buying, just make sure the part will fit your version of the car. If you're not sure, leave a comment and I'll check it for you. I'm opening the package now and double-checking the dimensions to make sure everything matches up, and here, everything fits perfectly. At this point, there are 3 old metal gaskets that need to be removed. Most likely, during disassembly, you also unscrewed some of the exhaust manifold studs. In any case, we need to remove all of them because over time, they become covered in soot and dirt. For the bolts themselves, that's not really an issue, but the problem lies with the special self-locking nuts, which could lose their properties if installed on old studs. That's why I'm removing all the studs and will later install the new ones that came with the set I purchased earlier. After preparing the surface for the new components, it should look just like you see on the screen. All these dark spots around the channels are burnt deposits that have built up over the years. Before installing the new gaskets, it's worth removing them because at this stage, I'm sure you don't want to come back here again for many years, right? Using a cotton cloth and some carbon cleaner, I wipe down all the joints that will later be covered by the gaskets. I also use power tools with a soft fabric brush to clean thoroughly without scratching the surfaces. For comparison, here's the difference before and after. At this point, I can be sure that the system will be sealed once everything is assembled correctly. Next, I hand thread all the studs into the engine block as far as I can go without tools. These studs must be tightened to the correct torque. You can't just do it by feel. I'll tell you in a moment the exact torque specification. I actually bought a special tool for tightening studs, but it turned out to be completely useless because it was damaging the thread surface. That's why I built my own tightening tool, investing less than $2 in it. On the threaded stud, I've tightened a few nuts against each other so they lock firmly in place, and at the end, I've added an M8 stud connector. You can buy all of these items at any regular hardware store. Nothing specialized is needed. With this setup, I can slide the connector onto the stud and safely tighten the thread. On the other side, I use a standard size 13 socket attached to a torque wrench set to 15 Newton meters. This way, I tighten all 12 studs securely. This is how the area looks once it's prepared for fitting the 3 metal gaskets. Each gasket should be positioned with the raised edge facing downward. You'll easily notice this during installation, since if you try to fit them the other way, they'll catch on the engine components. The only thing to be careful about is not forcing them into place, as bending them could compromise the sealing later on. A quick tip: before installing the new part, it's a very good idea to polish the connection points shown on the screen. These areas have a layer of paint applied during production, which over time loses its properties. So if you plan on keeping the car for a long time, it's better to remove it right away. Next, I carefully place the manifold back in position, making sure not to bend the studs. After placing it onto all the studs, it should still feel slightly loose before tightening. It shouldn't be locked in place too rigidly, otherwise it will make it harder to screw in the remaining bolts. In the next step, I position the gasket in its place at the connection between the manifold and the turbocharger, and I insert a screwdriver into the slot to keep the gasket from slipping out while I continue working. I thread the nuts onto all the studs by hand, as far as I can without using tools. Then I do the same with the bolts connecting to the turbocharger, carefully guiding them into place with pliers to make it easier to align the holes. Third, I insert the two bolts that connect the manifold to the EGR cooler pipe. This way, all bolts are in position while the part still has a little movement, since once you start tightening, it can be very difficult to insert any new bolts. Next, I tighten the manifold to the engine using a size 10 socket with 25 Newton meters of torque. Then, at the turbo connection, I use a size 12 socket and tighten to 30 Newton meters. Finally, for the bolts connecting to the EGR cooler, I apply less force, 10 Newton meters. Tighten all the bolts evenly, distributing the stress across each side. However, if you happen to break any of them, which can happen even if you're tightening correctly, keep in mind that these parts have been exposed to high temperatures for a long time, which may have weakened them. If a bolt snaps now or later, it will require drilling out the hole, rethreading it, and installing a new bolt. That's a separate topic, and I have a dedicated video about it on my channel. For now, let's assume everything is going according to plan. Alright, great. We've finished that part. Now let's move on to the valve cover. I start by cleaning the entire surface. You can see how dirty it is after so many years of use. We want everything to be perfectly sealed, so with a cotton cloth and some cleaning solution, I wipe down every edge. After this step, the gasket surface looks nice, clean, and dry. The valve cover itself is also quite dirty and covered with buildup on all sides, so I spend some time cleaning it as well. I scrub the air channels to remove carbon deposits, and I also wipe down the spot where the air filter will sit later. Then I remove the old gasket, which is already worn out and wouldn't seal properly if reused. I dry the area where it was seated. If necessary, I use special tools for the tight spots, such as cotton swabs, which are perfect for this kind of job. Any remaining debris I blow away with compressed air. This way, I end up with a clean, ready-to-use part where I can now install the new gasket. Before I do that, in order to seal it properly and maintain its flexibility for a longer time, I coat the entire surface of the rubber with a small amount of fresh engine oil. This gasket is very important, so for the sake of quality, I didn't buy a replacement part but an original one, which cost about $25. The earlier metal gaskets were not lubricated because of the high temperatures they are exposed to, but in this case, applying oil is absolutely recommended. Next, I set it in place between the plastic guides and insert all the bolts into their spots. Finally, I apply a thin coat of oil once more on the surface that will connect with the engine, then set the whole piece aside and return to work under the hood. Before putting the cover back on, I take advantage of the easy access to the openings in the engine block and vacuum their interiors with a narrow nozzle, just in case something might have slipped in during the earlier stages of our work. It's better not to take risks and eliminate any potentially dangerous situations before they happen. Then I place the cover, making sure to set it down symmetrically so the gasket doesn't fold. I tighten the bolts first gently and evenly from all sides and then with a torque wrench. For the fasteners near the injector studs, I use 7 Newton meters, and for the remaining bolts around the edge of the housing, I do not exceed 10 Newton meters. Once everything is secured as it should be, I plug all the openings with a piece of paper towel to avoid anything falling in. Next, I tighten that one tricky size 5 screw that holds the wires on the side of the valve cover, making sure they don't touch any hot engine components. Then, I install the triangular metal cover in the place of the air filter and fit 3 rubber seals on the top side. Moving to the other side of the car, I take out liqui moly injector cleaner, which I usually add to the fuel tank from time to time during refueling. This time, I soak a cotton cloth with it and carefully clean the injectors from the outside, removing all baked-on dirt and deposits. While this step doesn't affect the fuel mixture delivery, it has a big impact on the sealing of each injector once they are placed back into their seats. In addition, I will later pour a fresh can of the cleaner into the tank and let this strong solvent work inside the engine while driving with a warm engine. While cleaning, I also remove the old rubber seals from the injector shafts, which we will replace shortly with new ones. I also take off the copper washers located at the tips of the injectors. While replacing the rubber seals is not strictly necessary, believe me, it's worth doing, especially since they only cost a few dollars. However, replacing the copper washers is absolutely essential, as the old ones will never sit properly in the seat again. I install the new rubber seals on the injectors. These are original parts that cost me a total of $7 for the complete set, which makes them a very good investment and definitely not something worth saving on. As for the copper washers, in this case good quality replacements costing $6 in total, I place them into the channel using a screwdriver to carefully position them in the correct place. Hey, the next part of the repair will be in a separate video since my computer struggles with rendering longer footage. I warmly invite you to watch part 2. See you!